The twins had finally gone down after an hour of rocking, shushing, and praying they'd stay asleep long enough for me to breathe. The living room was dim except for the little lamp by the couch. My hospital bag sat by the door. Insurance card on top, discharge papers printed, an extra onesie folded so neatly it looked like I was trying to control the only thing I still could. My surgery check-in was early. The kind of early where you're not really waking up. You're just giving up on sleep. I stared at my phone, thumb hovering over my mom's name, and told myself not to be dramatic. This was a simple call. Normal people made this call and got a normal answer. "Hey," my mom said when she picked up, voice bright in that performative way she used when she was already annoyed. "Hi. Sorry it's late." I whispered automatically, even though my hands were shaking. My surgery's tomorrow morning. I need you and Dad to watch the twins for a few hours. Just while I'm in the hospital." There was a pause. Not a concerned pause. Not a, "let me check with your dad," pause, a cold pause. Then she exhaled like I'd asked for something unreasonable. "No," she said. I blinked. "No what?" "No. We can't do that." The word landed heavier than anything the surgeon had said all week. My chest tightened like I just missed a step on the stairs. I'd been bracing myself for fear, anesthesia, complications, waking up alone. I didn't think the worst part would be making one phone call, and what made it worse was how certain she sounded, like this had already been decided. I swallowed. "Mom, why?" I wish I could say I misunderstood. So I asked the one question that made everything worsey. My voice came out quieter than I meant it to, like if I spoke softly enough the answer would change. "Okay, I'm not asking you to keep them overnight," I said, forcing myself to stay calm. "I have to be at the hospital at 6. They're putting me under. I'll be in surgery, then recovery. They won't let infants in the waiting room. Hospital policy." On the other end, I heard the faint sound of a television, like this was background noise to their evening. "My husband can't do it," I added quickly before she could cut me off. "He tried. He's on a night shift tonight, and he's scheduled to travel in the morning. If he doesn't go, he risks his job, and we can't." I stopped myself, breath catching. "I just need a few hours, that's it." My mom made a small scoffing sound. "Everyone acts like their situation is the most urgent." "It is urgent," I said, still holding onto the hope that if I explained it clearly enough she'd hear me. "It's surgery. It's not optional." She cut in immediately. "We're tired. We have plans tomorrow." My dad's voice came through suddenly, closer to the phone. I hadn't even realized he was listening. "And twins?" "No. Absolutely not." I sat up straighter, heat rising in my face. "I can bring everything. I'll drop them at your house, they'll be asleep for most of it. I already measured bottles, labeled diapers, printed their schedule. You won't have to guess anything." There was another pause, and then my mom said slowly, like she was issuing a final decision in court, "You chose this. You'll figure it out. Not, you need help.
Not Ash, are you okay?
Not even I'm sorry." A verdict. I gripped the phone so hard my fingers hurt. "Mom, I'm not asking for a favor like it's date night. I'm asking so my babies are safe while I'm under anesthesia." My dad sighed like I was exhausting him. "Stop being dramatic. You always make everything a crisis." I tried to stay respectful until my dad revealed the real reason they weren't coming. "What do you mean, dramatic?" I said, and my voice finally cracked. "I'm having surgery." My dad didn't soften. If anything, he sounded more settled, like he'd been waiting for this part. "You always expect everyone to drop everything for you," he said. "This is what happens when you make choices without thinking them through." I went still. "Choices." "You heard me," he continued. "You have 2 babies, you've got a husband who can't even take off work, and now you want us to clean up the mess. You should have planned better." My stomach turned. It wasn't about the twins being too much. It wasn't about being tired or having plans. It was a lecture, and they'd picked the one moment where I couldn't argue from a place of strength. Because I was scared, and I needed them. I swallowed hard. "So you're saying because my husband has work, I deserve to go into surgery with no childcare?" My mom jumped in fast, voice sharp. "Don't twist it." "I'm not twisting anything," I said, hearing my own heartbeat in my ears. "I'm asking you to help me for a few hours so my babies are safe. That's it." My dad made a low sound of disgust. You think we don't have lives. You think we're just sitting here waiting to be used. Used. I stared at the dark hallway where the nursery was, listening for any sign the twins were waking up. Are you punishing me? I asked before I could stop myself. Is that what this is? My mom let out a laugh, short, mean. Punishing you. Please. You're not a child. Then why does it feel like I'm being grounded right now? I whispered. She ignored the question completely. If you were more responsible, you'd have backup plans. But you always do this. Rush into things, expect us to applaud, and then cry when it gets hard. That's when it clicked with a sick clarity. They weren't refusing because they couldn't. They were refusing because they wanted to teach me something. And the lesson got uglier the second I said, "Fine. I'll call Grandpa." My dad's tone changed instantly. "Don't drag him into this." I hung up shaking. But I wasn't out of options yet. I just didn't know the next option would ignite a war. After I hung up, the silence in the house felt louder than the argument. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the paperwork the hospital had sent me. Bolded instructions, highlighted risks, the kind of language that pretends to be calm while quietly warning you this is serious. The surgeon had been clear delaying wasn't smart. The symptoms were getting worse, and waiting could turn routine into complicated. I looked down the hallway again, like I could see the twins through the walls. Two tiny chests rising and falling. Two people who depended on me to show up tomorrow and come back. And suddenly I couldn't breathe. I grabbed my phone and started firing off texts. First, my best friend. "Any chance you can watch the babies tomorrow morning? Emergency." The no answer. Then the neighbor I'd waved to 100 times but never really known. "I'm so sorry to ask last minute." She replied almost immediately. "I'm taking my mom to an appointment." I wish I could. I searched for sitters, but no one reputable would take newborn twins on a few hours' notice, and the ones who said yes felt like a gamble I couldn't afford while I was under anesthesia. My husband came into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes, phone pressed to his ear. When he hung up, his face told me everything before he said a word. "They won't let me change it," he said quietly. "If I don't go in, I'm written up. If I don't travel. It's bad." A hot wave of guilt and anger crashed together in my chest. Am I failing my babies? And right behind it, why is my own family doing this to me? I stared at the contact I'd been avoiding, thumb hovering. I didn't call Grandpa to start a fight, but that's exactly what happened. I hit dial. Grandpa answered on the second ring, and by the end of the call, he was already putting on his shoes. "Hey, kiddo," Grandpa said. And his voice was the same steady voice I'd heard my whole life. Like nothing could knock it off balance. "What's wrong?" That question almost broke me. "Not what did you do now, you just what's wrong?" "My surgery's tomorrow morning," I said, words tumbling out. "I need someone with the twins for a few hours and Mom and Dad won't." They flat out refused. A Grandpa didn't react the way I expected. No shocked gasp, no rant. Just a long, thoughtful silence where I could hear him breathing on the line. "Okay," he said finally. "Tell me the details." I blinked. The details. What time do you have to be there? Which hospital? How old are the babies now? Formula or breast milk? Do they have a routine yet? He asked it like he was taking notes, like this was a problem that had a solution. I answered automatically. Check-in at 6, surgery at 7:30, twins a few months old, bottles labeled in the fridge, diapers stacked by the changing table, their sleepy cues, the white noise they liked. I tried to explain my parents' refusal without sounding furious, without sounding like I was trying to recruit him to my side. They said they're tired. They said they have plans. They said I'm being dramatic. Another pause. Then Grandpa's voice dropped, quiet and firm. "This isn't about babysitting," he said. The words stung, because I didn't know what he meant yet. But I felt the weight of it. "I'll be there," he added. "If you need me to stay with the twins, I will. If you need me to handle them, I can do that too." I didn't understand what he meant until I saw him walk into my parents' house. The next morning, I thought I was headed to the hospital, but Grandpa insisted we make one stop first. We pulled up to my parents' house while the sky was still that bruised, blue color before sunrise. I was in the back seat with the diaper bag wedged against my knees, my hospital bracelet packet in my purse. my stomach twisting so hard I thought I might be sick before we even got to the operating room. My husband looked at me like he wanted to turn the car around and skip the whole thing. Surgery, confrontation, all of it. But we didn't have that luxury. Grandpa was in the front passenger seat, hands folded over his cane, gaze fixed straight ahead, calm, prepared. My mom opened the door before we even knocked, like she'd been watching through the blinds. Her eyes flicked to me, then to my husband, and then they landed on Grandpa. The surprise on her face lasted half a second before it turned into irritation. "What is this?" she demanded, voice low and sharp. "Why are you here so early?" "I'm going to the hospital," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Like I told you." My dad appeared behind her in the hallway, already frowning. "We said we can't." Mom's hand tightened around the doorframe. "Can we not do this right now? Not in front of." She nodded at Grandpa like he was an audience she didn't approve of. "This is family business." A grandpa stepped forward just enough that they had to look at him. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't look angry. He looked disappointed, which was somehow worse. "Morning," he said pleasantly. "I'd like you to say it again." My mom blinked. "Say what again?" "What you told her last night," Grandpa said. "Repeat it, clearly." My dad puffed up defensive. "We told her we're not watching the babies." A grandpa nodded slowly, as if confirming something. "And why is that?" My mom jumped in. "Because we're exhausted. Because we have our own lives. Because we already raised our kids." My dad crossed his arms. "She's acting entitled. We're not free childcare." Grandpa didn't interrupt. He just listened, let them pile excuse on top of excuse until they sounded satisfied with themselves. Then he tilted his head slightly and asked one question that made my dad's face change. "If this were your daughter-in-law going under anesthesia," Grandpa asked, "would you still be too tired?" My dad tried to laugh it off, and that's when Grandpa said the sentence that stopped the room. Grandpa looked from my mom to my dad, and for the first time that morning his voice lost its softness. "This isn't about being tired," he said. "And it's not about plans." My mom's mouth opened, then closed again like she couldn't decide which version of herself to be, the victim or the authority. Grandpa continued anyway. "You're doing this because you want control, because you're offended she didn't live her life the way you would have scripted it. So you picked the one moment she's vulnerable, when she's about to be put to sleep. And you decided that was the right time to teach a lesson." The air in the hallway turned heavy. Even my husband stopped shifting his weight and went completely still. My dad's face flushed. "That's not what." "Yes, it is." Grandpa cut in, still calm but sharper now. "I've seen this behavior before. You think love is a reward you hand out when people obey." My mom snapped. "We're her parents. We get to have boundaries." "Boundaries," Grandpa repeated like the word tasted strange. "A boundary is I can't do this because of my health. A boundary is I'm not safe to watch newborns. What you're doing is leverage." Well, my mom's eyes immediately went shiny. Her voice wobbled on purpose. "So now I'm a monster because I'm overwhelmed. Because I'm..." Grandpa lifted one hand, palm out, and she stopped mid-sentence. "Don't," he said, and it wasn't loud, but it landed like a door slamming shut. "Don't use tears to dodge what you chose." Then he looked at my dad. "Do you remember when your mother had her surgery?" he asked. My dad blinked, thrown off. "What does that have to do with?" "It has everything to do with it," Grandpa said. "You begged me to take off work and drive 2 hours because you couldn't handle it alone. And I did. I sat in that waiting room all day. I brought meals. I stayed up with you when you were scared." My mom's expression flickered, like she wanted to deny it, but couldn't. Grandpa's voice dropped again, quieter, almost sad. "Family doesn't pick the hardest day of someone's life to make a point." He straightened. "You can refuse. That is your right. But understand this. If you can't be counted on in an emergency, you don't get to pretend you're the loving grandparents when it's convenient. You don't get access without trust." That's when their faces changed. Real shock, real fear. Because they finally realized he wasn't just scolding them. He was drawing a line. My dad sputtered. "You can't." "I can," Grandpa said simply. "And I am." Then he added, looking directly at my mom. "And I know you already decided this yesterday morning, before she ever called." My mom went rigid. How would you? Grandpa didn't even blink. Because you told your sister. And she told me? Silence. I expected them to explode instead. They tried the oldest trick in the book. My mom recovered first. She always did. She was good at switching masks. Okay, she said, forcing a laugh that sounded brittle. All right. This is getting out of hand. We'll watch them. My dad nodded too fast. Yeah, fine. Bring the babies in. We'll handle it. For a split second, my chest loosened. Pure instinct. The desperate part of me grabbing at relief. Then the truth caught up. They weren't offering because they suddenly cared. They were offering because Grandpa had cornered them, and they could already picture how this would sound if anyone else found out. Refused to help their daughter before surgery. It wasn't love. It was reputation management. I looked at my husband. He didn't even need to speak. His eyes said the exact same thing mine were thinking. Do we actually trust them? Because trusting someone with your newborn twins isn't about who should do it. It's about who as will do it safely, calmly, without resentment. Grandpa didn't move. He didn't accept their offer like it fixed anything. No, he said. My mom's smile twitched. Excuse me? No. Grandpa repeated, evenly. Not because you can't. Because I won't put those babies in the middle of your anger. My dad's face hardened. So you're punishing us now? Grandpa shook his head once. I'm protecting them. And I'm protecting her. And my mom's voice climbed. This is ridiculous. You're making us look like horrible parents. Grandpa's eyes narrowed slightly. No. Your choices did that. I tightened my grip on the diaper bag strap, heart pounding. The clock was ticking. My check in time was getting closer, and every second we stood in that hallway felt like borrowing time I didn't have. Grandpa turned to me. You've got bottles and diapers packed. I nodded, swallowing. Yes, good, he said. Then the babies come with me. My dad scoffed. You're going to take newborn twins by yourself. That's not safe. And then he said the one thing that made Grandpa change the plan completely. You're doing this because you've always favored her. Grandpa's expression went flat, like a door locking. With minutes left before check-in, Grandpa made a decision, and my parents realized they'd lost control. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and burnt coffee, and every fluorescent light felt too bright. I sat at admissions with my clipboard balanced on my knees, signing my name over and over like the paperwork could somehow guarantee I'd come back out the same person. My husband squeezed my hand so tightly my fingers tingled. You're going to be okay, he kept saying, but his voice had that thin edge of fear he tried to hide from me. My phone buzzed. Grandpa's twins are fed, both calm. One fell asleep on my chest. Don't worry about anything but you. I stared at the message until my eyes stung. That simple sentence, don't worry, was the first real comfort I'd felt in days. Another buzz. A voicemail notification from my mom. Against my better judgment, I tapped play. Her voice came through soft and wounded, like she was the one being wheeled into surgery. I don't like how I was spoken to this morning. It was humiliating. And I'm sorry you feel like we don't care, but you can't expect us to drop everything every time you decide something is an emergency. I closed my eyes. I'm sorry you feel not. I'm sorry we refused, not. I'm sorry we made this harder. Just a neat little twist that turned my fear into an inconvenience they'd been forced to deal with. My husband watched my face and quietly held his hand out. I put the phone in his palm without speaking. I couldn't afford to carry their guilt into an operating room. A nurse called my name. I stood up on legs that didn't feel like mine, pressed my lips to my husband's cheek, and tried to memorize the warmth of him, just in case. Then I followed the nurse down the hallway, past curtained rooms and muted monitors. I didn't text my mom back. I didn't defend myself. I didn't argue. For the first time, I chose what mattered: my body, my babies, my survival. And when the anesthesiologist asked me to count backward, I thought of Grandpa's message and forced myself to believe it. When I woke up, I didn't ask for my phone. The nurse handed it to me anyway. I thought Grandpa's speech would be the end. But the real shock came after surgery, when my parents tried to rewrite history. 2 days later, I was home on the couch with a pillow braced against my stitches, moving carefully like my body was made of glass. The twins were in their bassinets, and Grandpa was in my kitchen quietly washing bottles like he lived there. That should have been the end of it. Then my phone started lighting up. First it was my auntie. I heard there was some drama before your surgery. Why would you do that to your mother? Then a cousin's mom says you wouldn't let them help. That seems harsh. I just stared at the screen, half medicated, half furious. You wouldn't let them help. They were rewriting it, turning their refusal into my rejection, turning my emergency into their victim story. My husband read one of the texts over my shoulder and muttered, "Unbelievable." Grandpa didn't ask me what I wanted to do. He simply dried his hands, picked up his phone, and said, "Give me your aunt's number." "Aren't you?" I started. "No," he said, already dialing. "This ends today." He put the call on speaker. My aunt answered cheerful, then immediately stiffened when she heard his voice. Grandpa said, calm, polite. "I'm calling because you've been told a story that isn't true." There was a pause. "Well, She called her parents the night before surgery." Grandpa continued, and his tone never wavered. "They said no. Not we can't, not we're scared. They said, you chose this. Figure it out." I was there the next morning. I heard it, and when they offered to help, after being confronted, it was about saving face. Silence on the other end. Grandpa added, "If you'd like, I can send the call log and the messages, but I won't argue about facts." After that, the text slowed, then changed tone, and Grandpa didn't just defend me once. He set a rule that changed the whole family dynamic: no more vague accusations, no more triangulating through relatives. If someone had something to say, they could say it with the full timeline, and that's when I realized this wasn't just about a single. No. It was about the pattern I kept excusing. Lying there recovering, I had a lot of time to replay things I'd always shoved into the "that's just how they are" box. It wasn't the first time my parents' support came with strings. If I did things their way, they were generous. If I didn't, help turned into a lecture, or disappeared entirely. My mom called it being honest. My dad called it tough love. But it always landed the same way: criticism dressed up as concern, control disguised as guidance. And I realized something that made me feel both sick and weirdly free. They weren't confused about what I needed. They just didn't like that I needed it on my terms. Grandpa didn't give me a speech about forgiveness. He didn't tell me to cut anyone off forever. He taught me something simpler: love shows up when it's inconvenient, especially when it's inconvenient. So I set a boundary I should have set years ago. No more guilt games. No more. After everything we've done for you. Whenever I asked for something basic, no more last-minute punishments disguised as boundaries. If my parents wanted a relationship with me and the twins, it had to include respect and reliability. That meant no twisting my words to relatives, no surprise refusals in emergencies, no trying to make my husband the villain to excuse their behavior. And if they couldn't do that, then they didn't get access that required trust, period. The wildest part: my parents didn't change overnight, but I did. And if you're watching this thinking, "This feels familiar," here's what I wish someone had told me sooner: plan where you can, document what matters, and choose caregivers based on safety, not obligation. Don't beg people who use help as leverage. Protecting your peace isn't cruel. It's responsible. So where are things now? Here's what happened the next time they asked to see the twins. A few weeks later, I could finally stand without wincing, and the house started to feel normal again. Our version of normal, anyway. The twins hit that stage where they smiled in their sleep and then screamed like they'd been personally betrayed 5 minutes later. My husband and I were exhausted, but I was healing. I was here. That was the win. Grandpa kept showing up too, not with opinions, with groceries, with folded laundry, with a steady presence that made the whole house feel safer. He never once acted like I owed him for it. My parents did eventually reach out, not with a performance for other people, an actual conversation. My mom tried to start with, "We didn't mean." And Grandpa, in the calmest voice I've ever heard, said, "Intent doesn't erase impact. Start with the truth." That's what changed everything. We're rebuilding slowly, but it's on new terms. Visits aren't automatic. Trust isn't assumed. And emergencies aren't where lessons get taught anymore. Because that's what I learned: emergencies don't create character. They reveal it. And boundaries don't destroy families. They protect the people in them. Grandpa put it best when we left the hospital that day. He looked at me and said, "When someone shows you what matters to them, believe it the first time. So, would you forgive my parents? What would you have done in my place? Tell me in the comments. And if you think this ended with one apology, you're going to want the follow up. Like, subscribe, and I'll share what happened next.